Welcome to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless, whether the others like it or not. Comment is the big conversation. It's the great debate, but it can only be either if you join in. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls. 44-208-601-4555. That's the number to call. You call us, we'll call you back. Establish a clear line, and remember, if you get on the television with me, the volume on your television has to be at 0, or I'll have to move swiftly on, because no one will be able to understand either of us. You can SMS me on 447800008066, or you can email me at comment@presstv.co.uk. This being the 21st century, you can also tweet me at comment_presstv. Two subjects tonight, Palestine and Iraq. It's very difficult to get clear of either of them. Israel has just broken another truce, hasn't it? It has moved into the West Bank and kidnapped, yes, that's the word, kidnapped 11 Palestinians, entirely unlawfully, without any legal process, without any justification. Those 11 now join thousands of other Palestinian political prisoners held in Israeli dungeons without due process, tortured and often killed. Israel is a rogue terrorist state, international lawbreaker supreme, broken more UN Security Council resolutions than all of the countries in the world put together. Israel has just devastated not one, not two, but 6 United Nations schools, even though the United Nations told them that in those schools were sheltering hundreds of women and children fleeing from the remorseless bombardment of the last 4 weeks, which killed 2,000 Palestinians, maimed, most of them for life, 10,000 Palestinians, destroyed 80,000 houses, destroyed schools, hospitals, clinics, community facilities of all kind. And of course, as the UN has just said, 85% of those killed were civilians, and most of those were women and children. They say that Hamas was using these people as human shields. That's a complete lie, of course, as the Middle East editor, even of the BBC, made clear in a very public pronouncement when he said that he had seen no evidence that Hamas had used any civilians as human shields. That Middle East editor mysteriously disappeared from Gaza on holiday just a day or so later. Now, the reality is that if Hamas had been using people as human shields, why did Israel massacre the human shields? Why? If someone, God forbid, took hostages in a shopping mall near you, would the police massacre all the hostages just to get at the man who took them? Of course, they wouldn't. But Israel did, does, always has, and yet is exculpated by the mainstream media in Britain. I've just called for everyone to boycott Israel. Everything and anybody to do with Israel, except those 4% of Israelis who opposed the latest round of mass murder and massacre. Media outlets, principally in the BBC, who hadn't called me once throughout the 4 weeks of war, are now blocking my telephone with calls to invite me on to answer for the crime of demanding a boycott of a country, an international rogue state, which has just massacred thousands of people. You really couldn't make it up. And those of you who thought that the Israel lobby trolls would keep their heads down for a few weeks at least, till people had begun to forget about the crime that they had been relentlessly, remorselessly supporting, have got another thing coming. If you look at my feed and my timeline on Twitter, you'll see they're all out tonight. The lunatics are trying to take control of the asylum. So, has Israel just broken another truce? Will anybody do anything about it? And how can we respond here in our democracy to the fact that our country and the 3 mainstream political party leaderships are wholly behind the terrorist state and utterly unmindful of the damage that it has done. The second topic is, of course, provoked by the pitiable sight of thousands of members of a minority religious sect on top of a mountain, starving to death and dying of thirst, because at the bottom of the mountain are the fanatic takfiri extremists of the so-called ISIS or ISIL or Islamic State, who are going to behead them if they come down unless they convert. Now, this takfiri, fanatic, savage, heart-eating, head-chopping pestilence has, of course, the full support of Western countries over the border in Syria. One imagined that it didn't have the full support of those same countries in Iraq, except since this Islamic State took over half of Iraq, including some of Iraq's greatest cities, in June, not a finger has been lifted to help them. So we're asking, who should help them? Who should help the Christians, the Yazidis, the Shiite minority in Sunni majority towns, who are being told bluntly they must convert or be beheaded? It's hard to believe that this is happening in a country where Britain and America expended trillions of dollars and the blood of thousands of our own soldiers, supposedly to bring democracy to Iraq, that these same two countries have stood aside and watched this overwhelming takeover of huge parts of Iraq and the consequent murder. Which begs a question: who really are ISIS? Who really are ISIL? Who are they really working for? And who's really behind them? They certainly have never as much as thrown a stone at Israel, and as long as they're causing sectarian murder and mayhem in Iraq, it appears that Western countries just don't care. Iran has offered to help the displaced Christians, a quarter of the entire Christian population of Iraq have just fled from one city, the biggest Christian city in Iraq, which has just been taken over by ISIS. And another question arises. That place and many others were supposedly being protected by the Kurdish armed forces. Now, those Kurdish armed forces, like the Iraqi armed forces before them, have fled without a fight, leaving these destinations to be taken over, and all the people in them imperiled. The Peshmerga, which was once, we were told, a fearsome military machine, it's been built up by Western countries for many years, has not been prepared to fight ISIS, begging the question, who exactly is cooperating and collaborating with whom in the situation in Iraq? So these are the two subjects. All calls are welcome. If you disagree with me, then your call is especially welcome. Wherever you're from, whatever you are, come and have a go if you think that you are hard enough. Now, on Saturday in London, another giant demonstration for Palestine will take place. And on it will be a very large contingent of Jewish opponents of Zionism and the crimes of Israel. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Our enemy is not the Jews, is not Judaism, it is Zionism, an atheistic political creed which has led the Jews to disaster and led the reputation of Judaism into the mire. But there are hundreds of thousands of Jews, religious and secular, who stand with us in defense of the Palestinian people. One of them, Sonia Levine, actually burned her Israeli passport and renounced her citizenship in London just this week. Let's take a look.
My name is Sonia Levine. I am a British resident. I am a nurse and a mother. And I wish to renounce my Israeli citizenship for the following reasons. A Palestinian child aged 10 years old has endured 3 wars in their lifetime and suffered more loss and more trauma than we could ever imagine. No child anywhere else in the world has been exposed to such violence. This is a human catastrophe. I am prepared to encounter opposition and hostility. However, compared to the conditions the Palestinian people of Gaza have endured under siege for the last 9 years, this cannot compare. Every Jewish person who chooses not to speak out is complicit with the actions of Israel. I cannot bear witness to the horrors of Gaza and do nothing. I cannot remain silent. I do not wish to have more rights than any other person.
Shame on you.
I want equality and freedom for all peoples to coexist. It stinks.
A brave Jewish lady, Sonia Levine, a credit to the Jewish people. Has Israel broken another truce? And who should help the displaced Iraqis? How come Israel seems to be getting away with the crimes that they committed in Gaza? The United States Senate just voted unanimously. I'm not making that up. The great Senate of the United States voted 96 votes to 0 in favor of Israel's war against the Palestinian right to defend themselves, and denouncing the United Nations for thinking about having an inquiry into war crimes and crimes against humanity carried out by Israel over the last 4 weeks. 96 to 0. Mo is in the UK on the first of our two subjects. Has Israel just broken another truce? Mo, go ahead.
Yes, George, hi.
Hi, go ahead, sir.
Well, we know Israel breaks truces all the time, and they obviously give false reasons for this. If you remember, the Israeli Defense Force spokesperson lied when that soldier who was supposedly kidnapped by Hamas, he lied when he was found dead, and he claimed that he was found in a tunnel, that they had dragged him into the tunnel. You could tell, you could see he was lying about that. Mm-hmm. But the other aspect is, George, that Navi Pillay, the United Nations High Commissioner, the Human Rights Commissioner, who spoke out so eloquently against Libya based on false charges that Gaddafi was going to attack Benghazi, but she has remained completely silent about the murders in Gaza. And we should dispute this. But there are a couple of other aspects I'd like to discuss with you, George, quickly.
Yeah.
Most of the Zionists who actively practiced and prospered under the South African apartheid regime are now living in Israel and are practicing the same apartheid system.
Well, there's 2 points, Mo. I need to make 2 points on that. There were many Zionist supporters of the apartheid system in South Africa, but there were also a very large number of Jewish South Africans in the African National Congress, and a large number of them were very good friends of mine, and some of them were very great heroes. In fact, when I was underground in South Africa, on behalf of the African National Congress, during apartheid, every house I slept in, every car I moved in, every dinner I ate, and every penny in my pocket was given to me by Jewish South African members of the ANC. Secondly, you're not correct about Navid Pillay. She's no hero for me for lots of reasons. But actually, she was the spokesperson who accused Israel of war crimes and crimes against humanity at the United Nations Human Rights Council just last week. And it was that statement by her and the decision by the committee on which Britain abstained to investigate whether to have an investigation into those crimes that the United States Senate just voted 96 to 0 to condemn. Shaz is in London. Shaz, welcome.
First of all, I want to say thank you to you for speaking on behalf of us. No political Muslim leader, apart from Iran, spoke and represents us the way you have. And I really, really appreciate that. And I really thank you for that.
Thank you, brother.
I don't think there's any surprise Israel breaks the truce. It's done it so many times. Even when Israel does any negotiations, last time when he wanted the release of an Israeli soldier and he released 900 prisoners, and then later he went and he rearrested them.
They have rearrested the vast majority of them now, yes.
So I think it's no surprise to us. But I think, to be honest with you, it's really on us, all the Arab states around the world, or in the Middle East, to put pressure on their governments to speak out. Because last week you appealed to the Saudi Prince Abdullah to stop oil. I'm appealing to them. Can't they see what they have done with Saddam, what they have done with Gaddafi? They used them and then killed them. Same thing is going to happen to them. Why don't they listen? Why don't they speak out? This is the only time that this is the opportunity for them to speak out and save the massacre in Palestine. They can do it. Nobody else can do it. We can't do it. They are in governments. They can do it.
Well, I couldn't put that better, Shaz, so I'm not going to try to. I just make the point that there are many things that we can do here also. We can boycott everything to do with Israel. We can pressurize our own members of parliament, who will shortly be up for re-election, and ask them what they did during this war. And the answer, I'm afraid, in most cases, will be absolutely nothing, except where they were actively on the side of Israel. Let's go to New York, talk to Ahmado on the same subject. Has Israel just broken another truce? Ahmado, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mr. George.
Hello, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you for what you're doing for everybody.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not going to say the Palestinian, for everyone.
Thank you.
My question for the Palestine, Israel, this is not the first time this thing happened.
Yeah.
And since the Oslo Peace Accord, I think in 1993-94, I was here in America. How many percentage at that time, the settlement at that time, how many settlement right now in Palestine?
Yeah, yeah.
I beg the Palestinian to speak one voice.
Well, look, again, Ahmado, I couldn't put that better, so I shan't try to. It's 20 years since the Oslo Accord. Not 1 centimetre of Palestine is free. And the West Bank, as you rightly say, has, in the last 20 years, been literally paved over with more and more illegal Israeli settlements, checkpoints, military roads, and all the rest of it, making the two-state solution envisaged in the treaty at Oslo null and void. Ali is in Iran. Let's hear from him. Ali, welcome to the show. Ali,
hello,
welcome.
George.
Go ahead.
George, I was going to cut it short. All the tax fees come from Saudi Arabia. These guys are born under the ground. They grow up under the ground by Saudi government and your Queen Elizabeth backing them up for past 80 years and killing all the innocent people in Bahrain and the rest of it. That's where I think they come from. And you are working for British government and getting paid from the government, which is they have their hand on the dirty blood money. So can you explain to me why you're still in the government?
Well, I'm not sure you should drag Queen Elizabeth into this. I'm not sure what she's got to do with it. The British state has been up to its neck in perfidy in Iran, in Iraq, and everywhere around the world in its empire days, some of which it's still trying to cling on to. But I'm not sure that the Saudi government is supporting ISIS. They'd be exceptionally stupid if they were, because actually they're the next and plumpest target. Very, very plump indeed. But no doubt some people in Saudi Arabia are supporting them. And it's a very great shame on them that they are. And I wonder how they feel when they see Christians, people of the book, fleeing for their lives just ahead of the decapitators. Let's go to Moby in Sweden. Moby, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway, for giving me the opportunity to be on air. Thank you very much, and I respect your admiration for what you do, and also for the truth voice that you speak.
Thank you.
I was just going to make a comment about the resignation of Baroness Warsi, and I salute her unreservedly for what she's done. And it seems that the others are trying to jump on the bandwagon now, including Mr. Miliband, who's saying that she did the right thing. But we didn't see any of this before.
No.
They were all saying the same voice that Israel's got the right to defend itself. But I think now things are slightly changing, and we saw today Nick Clegg also making the announcement that there should be a ban on the embargo of sales to Israel of arms.
Yeah.
So what are your views on that?
Well, you're absolutely correct. These politicians are beginning to move, unfortunately, after the majority of the killing has already taken place. But they're moving under pressure. They're moving under the pressure of the anti-war movement, which week after week has been bringing out tens, scores, hundreds of thousands of people to protest, who've been filling Twitter and Facebook and the ether with their anti-war, anti-occupation messages. And these politicians can finally see that actually their staunch support for Israel is going to lose them votes and seats, and it should. Mr. Cameron pooh-poohed the resignation of Baroness Warsi. I don't know if she'll be the last minister to resign over the question, but I absolutely endorse what you said. She's worthy of respect for having, even belatedly, made the stand that she has. Let's go to London, talk to Alexander in London. I'm not sure on what subject. Alexander, go ahead.
Hello, hi, George. How you doing?
Go ahead, yes, very well, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, Israel has been breaking what you call it.
You'll have to say that again. I missed that, Alexander. Unfortunately, that's a bad line. We'll need to try and get back to Alexander. We're talking about Palestine, talking about Gaza and the West Bank, talking about Iraq. There are thousands of Yazidis, a small, ancient, 4,000-year-old sect, on top of a mountain in Iran, starving to death, dying of thirst. They're scared to go down to the bottom of the mountain because the fanatics of ISIS have promised to cut their heads off if they did. Ahmad is in Oman. Let's hear from him. Go ahead, Ahmad.
Hi, George. This is Ahmad from Oman. I
Welcome.
just wanted to know, what is the significance of this war which is started just now? No, why it's not started earlier? Why it's not started late? And what is how much Hamas is part of this war? How much they are responsible, because everything is thrown on them, that they are part of it, and that's why we are just reacting rather than attacking on Gaza. So what's your point of view?
Hamas are a part, the most important part, of the Palestinian resistance. The Palestinian people have every legal and moral right to resist the illegal occupation and siege of their country. If, God forbid, anyone occupied Oman, you, Ahmad, would fight them. The Israelis have occupied Palestine, and the Palestinians are fighting them. Not very effectually, because Israel is a military superpower backed by the world's hyperpower and with the sympathy and support of Western countries and their political and media class. But they are exercising their moral and legal right to resist, and I support them. Okay, we're talking about Iraq and Palestine. I have to take a very short break for 3 minutes, and God willing, I'll still be here when you get back. It's a short news bulletin. Don't go away. There'll be more here on these subjects, on comment. We're talking big time, Palestine and Iraq, and your views, whatever they are welcome. Call me now, text me, or tweet me. Welcome back to Comment with me, George Galloway, on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. This is the big conversation. This is the great debate. But if it's going to be either, I need your calls, your SMS, and your emails, and also your tweets. I think the details are coming up on the screen now. We're talking in the wake of the first of what will undoubtedly be very many breaches of the so-called truce between the Zionist gang that calls itself Israel, the world's biggest rogue state, terrorist outfit, international lawbreaker supreme, and the occupied and besieged Palestinian people. Just today, 11 Palestinians were kidnapped, yes, kidnapped by the State of Israel. Now, when one soldier in a war, when he was invading another country, was taken prisoner, there was a flash breaking news all over the BBC that an Israeli soldier had been kidnapped. Turned out, of course, as usual, to be a lie. I haven't seen any breaking news on the British media about the kidnap of 11 Palestinians in the West Bank. Have you? I'm sure that you have not, because the truth is that the blood of Israelis is regarded by the Western media and political class as being infinitely more valuable than the blood of an Arab, than the blood of a Muslim. And I'm kind of just asking why. I'm also asking who is going to come to the aid of the Christians and other minorities who are on the run from the head-chopping, heart-eating fanatics of ISIS, and why nobody is doing anything about their steady advance. Zara is in Somalia. She wants to talk about Israel and Palestine. Zara, welcome to the show. Turn the volume down, Zara.
Thank you, George. Hi.
Turn the volume down, please.
Okay, George. Hi, George, I can hear you.
Yes, go ahead, sister, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to read a comment. I wanted to ask exactly what are the Arabs doing about this?
Well, that's the $64,000 question. What are the Arabs doing about it? Nothing, actually.
Yeah.
Precisely nothing. Why do you think that might be?
Oh, that is a very bad news. Supposing there's a...
Sorry, Zara, we've lost that line. But I'm with you, I think, in spirit. Zeke is in London on the line. Let's hear from Zeke.
Hello. Hi, George. Is that you?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
How are you doing, George? My name is Zeke, and I am an Israeli citizen and also a British citizen. I live in London, and I've got some really important stuff to tell you, and hopefully to get some other people to listen to me as well.
Yes, go ahead.
The question I put to you is, how do you explain the distance and narratives that people like Tony Blair and Hillary Clinton and John Kerry have, as opposed to the narrative that is shown in popular media here in London and in the UK? Excuse me, I'm a little nervous.
Well, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. Let me answer that point first, then you can come back. It's very easy. Tony Blair and Hillary Clinton and John Kerry are stooges of the Israel lobby in the United States. And Tony Blair is a paid agent of the interests that support Zionism in the world, and very highly paid one, too. Now, the facts are, as you probably heard me say before, the pro-Israel lobby in the United States is overwhelmingly a fundamentalist Christian lobby. It's nothing to do with Jews. Many, many Jews in the United States and here are on the demonstrations against Israel and have nothing to do with the crimes of Zionism. Go ahead, Zeke.
Israel are Jews who are waiting for the Messiah to arrive and denounce Israel in that sense. So they have very little in common with you, because as far as I'm concerned, the Messiah is going to arrive.
Zeke, I'm not going to allow you. I'm not going to allow you to traduce their Judaism, because we don't allow that here. They're allowed to believe what they like. But Dr. Norman Finkelstein, he used to be a professor, until the Zionist lobby got him sacked, or Professor Ilan Pappé, an Israeli citizen, are comrades of mine, comrades in arms, shoulder to shoulder, blood brothers. And there are many, many thousands of progressive secular Jews who are not waiting for the Messiah to arrive, but who will be with us on these demonstrations all over the world and in London on Saturday. Go ahead.
Israelis who criticize Israel's acts. However, there is a narrative that all Israelis are aware of and the rest of the world, or at least a big proportion of the rest of the world, is not aware of. And it's not because Hillary is a puppet, and it's not because John Kerry is getting paid by the Jews or the Zionists or the Christians.
Don't put words in my mouth. Don't put words in my mouth.
No, but that is what you said.
No. I said nothing about Jews. And I didn't say he was being paid. I said Blair was being paid. And that Clinton and Kerry were stooges of the Israel lobby, which I described as overwhelmingly fundamentalist Christian. So don't lie. Don't come on my show and lie. This is the one place that you cannot lie about me and about what I have said. Your problem is, your narrative is now bankrupt. Nobody is listening to it. The whole world can see Israel for what it is and what it does, and it doesn't like what it sees. Go ahead.
Well, I've been watching the media for years now. I've been watching Israeli media, I've been watching Al Jazeera, I've been watching BBC, CNN. Every now and then there are articles that are in line with the Israeli narrative, and the Israeli narrative is that Hamas is not an organization which is fighting against the aggressive Israelis. It's or in other words, it's not retaliating. It's a proactive, aggressive organization, and the Israelis are the ones who are getting back at Hamas after Hamas has initiated
Israel
the aggression.
Just killed.
And let me just say something here. This is a very important issue. Every single time there was a ceasefire, or at least, well, now I lost count. There's about 6 or 7 ceasefires in this last war. The Israeli military, as far as the Israeli media was saying, and as far as some CNN reporters were saying, the Israeli military seized fire first.
Well, I'm sorry. These are just untruths. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and imagine that you just don't know the truth rather than that you are deliberately distorting it. But I want to deal with your more fundamental point. Your state, Israel, is entirely illegitimate. It has been built on other people's land, which Israel stole from them. The people from whom it was stolen will never stop resisting until it is returned. Now, these are the simple facts. A people has been wiped off the face of the map, scattered to the 4 corners of the earth, and millions of them live under illegal occupation, annexation, and siege. And they won't accept it. They have decided, like the brave Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto, that it's better to die on your feet than to live on your knees until your murderer comes to kill you one by one. The Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto are rightly remembered as freedom fighters, as are the Palestinian resistance. Historically, they will be so remembered, and guess what, Zeke? In most of the world, amongst most people, they are already so regarded. So, thanks for calling. Gave you a good shout, but I must move on to Abdul in London. Go ahead, Abdul.
Oh, hi, George. Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I ask the question, I hope the family's well, and especially the new little baby boy.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
My question is, I think it was early on during the week, I read somewhere that not the Israeli clerics, but the Saudi clerics had issued a fatwa against protests.
Yes.
And as you know, and as you've already mentioned,
that's true. Yeah, the Mufti, the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia issued a fatwa banning protests for Palestine in Saudi Arabia. Imagine.
Now, well, there's a huge protest, as you've already mentioned, in London on Saturday. But I wanted to know what your views were on that and why they would issue such a fatwa? I mean, there's
because
many things that they could issue
because the king and his men told him to. The Grand Mufti in Saudi Arabia is not so grand. He's appointed by the royal dictatorship in Saudi Arabia, and he answers only to them. But on the judgment day, Abdul, he'll have to answer to someone else. Thanks for the call. Azmat is on the line in Manchester, and on the same subject. Azmat, welcome to the show.
Great show.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a point. What's really depressing about this situation is when people talk about America trying to resolve this issue and be an honest broker in the Middle East. Clearly, this is a really dire situation for the future of Palestine. I remember in the last operation Cass led, do you remember when the Israelis used white phosphorus and they attacked a UN installation and using white phosphorus? There was outcries of war crimes. When the Israelis did a report about that incident, they actually cited the American use of the same substance in Iraq as a legal precedent
in Fallujah,
to do it.
In Fallujah.
Yeah. So effectively, you've got America using what Israel are doing as a prototype, a way to fight wars in other areas where killing of civilians en masse is collateral damage. They're not just linked because of the fact that they've got a strong pro-Israeli lobby. It's far deeper than that. And obviously, you look at people like ISIS and even Hamas in the eyes of the Saudis, they're probably terrified that political Islam will sort of seep into their neighborhoods, and we know that they rely on the Americans to protect them from any incursion from any external sources. They're not really up to fighting these people themselves. So what really is the position now for the Palestinians in honesty when you consider, as far as the current peace talks are concerned, Israel want a demilitarization of Hamas, and Hamas want the lifting of the blockade, two totally opposing views. How do those two polar views get an agreement now?
There won't be any agreement. There won't be any agreement. And as long as I'm alive, there won't be any agreement. I hope my children live to see a settlement of this question. But there will be no agreement, because you have the irresistible force of the Palestinian people who have decided, they have spoken, they have come to a firm and final decision that they will not go quietly into the museum of ex-nations. And by existing, they will resist. And by resisting, they will exist. And that is the paradigm that we have to enter. The paradigm is this: the Palestinians will resist, they're the hammer. The anvil on which the hammer can operate has to be us around the world. We have to change the balance of power in the world. And that means changing the stance of our own governments around the world, boycotting everything Israeli, always and proactively so, seeking out Israeli products in supermarkets, and picketing people who are going in to those stores, persuading storekeepers that it's actually not in their interest to provoke public opinion in Britain in this way. We have to proactively build links and support with the Palestinian people under occupation and siege. That's happening already in the world. There's been a massive change. You heard the Israeli citizen on the telephone just a few minutes ago. He's complaining that no one's listening to their narrative. That's because people can see that their narrative is a bright, shining lie. Let's go to New York. Talk to Mohammed. Mohammed in New York, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. George.
Good afternoon to you, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just want to comment about Palestinian, this horrific death of children over there, and women and elderly.
Yeah, go on.
It's really, really sad for we, the Muslims around the world. The powerful Muslims, especially the Arab, they're not saying nothing about it. And also, I want to emphasize with the ICC in The Hague, if they don't take action against Israel in this one, that means they're going to be not credible anymore.
Well, Israel is not a signatory to the ICC.
The weak.
Mohammed, Israel is not a signatory to the ICC, and neither is the United States. So no one from either of these countries can be tried at the ICC. There are other courts, but not that one. Talal is in Nottingham, in England. Let's hear from Talal. Go ahead. Talat, sorry, I beg your pardon.
Thank you for your...
Sorry, Talat, go ahead.
I just wanted to say is that, there's a brilliant app, because you mentioned boycotting Israeli products. Anybody can download it on their iPhone or on Android, and basically you can actually scan the product and it will tell you if it's from Israel or got any connection. So that would be something that would be obviously beneficial for the Ummah and anybody else that wants to obviously take advantage of that. Also, the other thing what is quite shocking is the lack of support that we are actually getting from this so-called coalition government. They've not been really supportive in any sort of way.
Well, it's been staunchly supporting Israel, as was Ed Miliband until a couple of days ago.
It was. But I think with the pressure, like Baroness Wasi did, I think if we put pressure on the government, eventually it will crack and break.
Yeah, I agree.
What I did, I got a lot of my Muslim friends and non-Muslim friends, and we'd written a petition to Anna Soubry, which is obviously the local MP and which is within the cabinet. Finally, I did get a reply. It was an echo of what Cameron was saying. Obviously, at least she's aware that there are people in her area, in Gedling, in Nottingham, that are obviously against her. So in Broxton. So yeah, so it's quite interesting. I just wanted to make them comments and hopefully, obviously, do the good work that you're doing. I think you're brilliant. And I do admire your extraordinary courage that you actually show on here. It must be really difficult. But,
it's not difficult for me, Talat. I'm afraid only of God. It's not difficult for me at all, and it's my duty to do so. And no one will ever stop me doing so. As long as God gives me breath, I'll use it. Barry is in Norway. Has Israel just broken another truce, Barry?
Hello, George.
Yes, welcome.
Good to speak to you again, Mr. Galloway. First of all, let me just send few words to that maybe 2-3 last caller by the name of Syke from UK who was trying to frame you.
Yes.
I think let him try and go to another place like BBC and CNN and find someone to frame, but not our George Galloway.
George
Galloway is in Press TV not only for himself, but he's there for the people. So Syke, let him find another place to go and frame other people, but he cannot put words in your mouth.
Yeah, he'll find a ready echo in Fox News, perhaps, or the BBC, the same
and
thing.
Secondly, Mr. Galloway, my deepest condolence to the Palestinians, and I would like the world to know that when it comes to all these human rights, the British and the Americans are howling in Africa and Asia. They are the biggest human right breakers, definitely, and they don't care what the lives of innocent Palestinians that have been butchered these last few days, definitely. And also, I think it's high time for the Muslim world and that Arab world. Let them come together and and do something for the lives of these Palestinians.
Barry, tell me this: has Norway said anything about this breaking of the truce today?
Well, to be honest, when it comes to the truce, I didn't go deeply into the news, but I know that there are big support for most of the Norwegians out here who are supporting, who are really in for the Palestinians, and they are really against of these bombardments and these sufferings Palestinians are encountering.
Okay, Barry, thanks very much for a great call. Let's go to Pakistan, talk to Javeed Khan. Javeed, welcome to the show. Go ahead. Javeed, are you there?
Is that George?
Yes, welcome, sir.
George, may I first of all thank you for being a beacon for all of us from this part of the world.
Thank you, sir.
We are greatly heartened in following your lead regarding this slaughter that we have seen for the last 1 month of children, women, and civilians by Israel in Gaza.
Javed Saab, thank you very much indeed for your kind words. It's a bad line, which is the only reason I'm moving on. Well, not quite the only reason. Last caller, Gary in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada. Gary, always welcome. Go ahead.
Good evening, George. The Israeli so-called breaking of the truce is the most unsurprising news of the day. They would never seriously acknowledge the truce the moment that they saw or see any advantage for themselves in breaking it. But George, we have very little time left. I know we're near the end of the show, and I just wanted to say that I hope that your project to crowdfund the killing of Tony Blair is going well, because we have an idea here for you, which is if you might want to crowdfund Bibi and the Baby Killers as the next project.
Yeah, my next, once I get this Tony Blair film done and out, the proceeds, which I hope will be handsome, will fund my next film, which will be on Palestine. I think that there's a real need for a film authored by me, telling the truth about Palestine, historically and contemporaneously. Gary, go on, last couple of minutes.
I'm done, George. Bye.
Unfortunately, we lost Gary in Halifax, but we've still got Ahmed in London. You've got a minute and 20 seconds, Ahmed.
Yes, hi, George. Thank you for having me. What I don't understand up to now, what is Hezbollah are doing at the moment? Are they watching what's happening in Gaza, or they can't fight back? Because one day Israel will attack them back to Hezbollah.
Well, I think Hezbollah and Syria and Iran are the only three parties that have given any military support to the resistance in Gaza at all. So it's a bit rich, if I may say so, questioning their role. The resistance in Gaza has already spoken on that and has fulsomely thanked the Hezbollah and the Islamic Republic of Iran for giving them the only means to defend themselves, which they have. A better question, Ahmed, would be, what are all the others doing? I'll be back, God willing, next week. See you then.
Hello, just comment your name and the Facebook account number, and just make sure about your television volume set to 0. So 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know. You'll redirect me put through the phone number, and then we'll call you back. Comment. Can I have your telephone number? Okay, so I'll comment.